Security operatives under the State House Anti-Corruption Unit raided Bank of Uganda and arrested 4 officials in connection with a currency printing scandal. This comes just months after a damaging parliamentary inquiry into its operations. Those arrested allegedly for printing extra money without authorization include 2 senior officials in the currency department, procurement and disposal unit, and a junior officer who had just joined the bank.
Now on Friday, Emmanuel, who is the governor of the bank, issued a statement about the consignment but verification. Now, BOU normally is the expected as the anti-State House corruption to seek into the matter investigations. Now, we start our conversation on that note, looking into what exactly might have happened. So we go and have a look. We're first going to have a look at what came out from the government spokesperson in regards to that. That is Mr. Ofono Pondo. Before we can get our guests into the conversation, who, by the way, are Honorable Paul Mwiru. He is a member from Kosase, Member of Parliament for Jinja East constituency. Welcome to Morning at NTV, Honorable.
Thank you. Good morning, viewers.
And also joined by Sisi Kagaba. She is the Executive Director, Anti-Corruption Coalition Uganda.
Thank you and good morning.
Now we get into the conversation first by taking a look at what exactly the government spokesperson had to say about this.
These pallets were packed in similar fashion like the Bank of Uganda items, which raised suspicion. They did not raise a complaint there because they had received their 20 pallets. When they returned, they filed a formal complaint to the bank administration, and it reached the governor, Bank of Uganda, upon which he wrote asking for special investigation because it was beyond Bank of Uganda. It touched the airline, it touched aviation, it touched customs. Whether these other 5 pallets had already been packed before or was packed, maybe they stopped somewhere. Individuals include UN, USAID, and 3 ordinary local Uganda business people. Among them, Mr. Charles Simbire, Amptech Investment Limited, and Mandela Millers. From the airway bill, which is at the airport, and also which is at customs, they have been checked and they are not illegal or dangerous material. The items of UN and USAID and Ministry of Health are things related to electronics. The response of the airline has been, we are sorry, we are willing to make compensation of up to $25,000. That's what this airline has put in writing to Bank of Uganda. Whether that is enough to ameliorate the embarrassment, it is up to Bank of Uganda.
From the government spokesperson on Friday, and for a number of Ugandans on social media it became a joking point of things. For others it was not a surprise. Corruption, as the president has stated in his State of the Nation address of 2019, he did mention the fact that corruption is our #1 enemy as a country. Are we surprised by this? We ask our guests first, and I'll start with you, Ms. Kagaba. You are from the Anti-Corruption Coalition Uganda. Does this come as a surprise?
No, obviously it doesn't come as a surprise, and I think the question that we need to ask ourselves is, one, whether this is the first time it is happening or this is the first time it is coming out. Because if this isn't the first time that it's happening, then I think as a country we're in for very difficult times, but it isn't very surprising with the way most issues are handled in our country. It wouldn't really be very surprising, but I think for me, for such a thing to actually happen to the central bank, I think there are a lot of issues of repute, and obviously there are issues of public trust and confidence in the bank, especially considering the fact that we've just seen the whole issue of Kosase report and something like that. I think for me, it isn't really very surprising that such things are happening in the central bank.
Okay, now you mentioned Kosase, and we do have Honorable Mwiru from Kosase, the committee that did unearth quite some shocking details, a bank being sold over the phone, and just 6 days ago there was a halt to the committee actually going ahead to investigate the bank once again.
Well, I think I will reserve my comment about the investigation yet again, because as a member of the committee, That's not what it is. Actually, let me use something to explain it. You see, when Bank of Uganda does an intervention and it puts money in the bank, under the law, that money is recoverable. What Auditor General did was to ask, has this money been recovered? And under the Audit Act, the audit cycle is complete by a Treasury memoranda. We are required as COSASI to pronounce ourselves on the issue as to whether the money, the intervention, the 472 billion from Bank of Uganda, which went to Ukraine Bank, whether it has been recovered. Because we assume there was a bank and the money was put in when the bank was under statutory management. They must have investigated to see the money which was in the bank, where did it go? So of course I've had a lot of, but since the Speaker has issued a statement and I'm bound by her guidance, I will await her guidance on the subject, because the Chair said it's going to interface with the Speaker. That's as far as but what is very revealing about BOU, that during our interface with them, this one we learned that we don't appropriate money to them. The framers of the law as of then assumed that Bank of Uganda, for strategic reasons, must present its budget to the board, and actually they normally get money from their dealings, from the interest, the money from the tax revenue they raise, and we normally also appropriate money to them through recapitalization. But back to the issue. In a country where we used to manage by crisis and now we manage by scandal, I think it does not surprise. What all they are doing is damage control. Because we have all traveled. If you go on the plane, if there is not a cargo plane, they normally ask for a manifest. And when you talk about a chartered plane, it's chartered. First, the word chartered means that the Bank of Uganda must have framework contracts with the service providers. And so they must first tell us, was this a groupage plane that other part to put on this? But of course, as someone who has studied criminology, there is what we call organized crime. And if this has been happening, because I've been printing money, we've been seeing money always. One time the governor was saying, this time I won't print money. You remember those statements? That meant that he had been printing. It was inferred from Mr. that he had been printing. But I think what the guys in Bank of Uganda were smart, and I want to applaud them for that, because they used to know that government presses an order for money. These guys get service people around, throw on their pallets, and they make a kill. They make a kill out of the process. So in the process, they also, I think, because since it's organized crime, they also have to go through the network. They also have to make their own pallets and also put on the same chartered plane, because those, you know, you don't have to do some reconstruction, because they don't explain how did these other cargo end up on a chartered plane. So they also put on their pallet. So after reaching here, I think they learned that, look, these guys may also have done our way. So as a result, these guys start running after them, because the question which must be answered, BOU has a board, and it has an internal mechanism within the bank. If the governor had issues to raise, first, you would raise them with the internal audit within the bank. The internal audit would come up with a report and they would give it to the board, and the board would process on that. To when you read our constitution, it provides for institutions of government. We have what we call the accountability sector, where there is the Ministry of Ethics and Integrity, there is the IGG, there is the DPP, there is a parliament, there is almost all sectors. You understand? So meaning that the formal way of communicating would have been for the governor first to inform police, or even to request for security, to condone Bank of Uganda as a scene of crime. You understand? And then, once it's condoned as a scene of crime, then the investigation would start. But to me, this points to one thing, that the young men and women within BOU were smart. That actually they are doing with a lot of perfection what their superiors have been doing. Because why they still continue working under very difficult circumstances when there is a way of making money the way other colleagues are doing it?
But you see, you raise a very, very interesting point there, and as soon as this saga hit social media, there are a couple of questions that came to my mind. One is there a breach of protocol with Bank of Uganda? And two, was it necessary? Because you see, when things hit the media, you are giving Ugandans an opportunity to view it whatever way they want and interpret it whatever way they want to. When you hear of incidents like this in Europe, and you know we always run to Europe because that's our study case. That's where we want to study from and copy, and hopefully we can apply here. You don't cause such an alarm publicly with such an incident, and this worries a lot of people because this is a chartered plane. Where is the bridge? Is it in Bank of Uganda? Is it at Entebbe International Airport? How does someone print extra money without authorization?
No, I think that one was answered. You know, one time, I think the guys who print money in France had been warned one time when they were resisting on print extra money. Then they warned them that we shall do the printing here in Uganda. So because they were threatened of losing the trade of printing money, that's how they had to get. Because you see, like some insider source was asking us questions that the governor is the chairman of the board. Does it do day-to-day running of business of the bank? They are responsible officers and they are supervisors of those people. How come they are not the one who reported the matter? You understand that in a subtle way, you see him saying, I'm dealing with Nakalema. And of course I have issues with that office. Because you see, we have established government structures of fighting corruption under the Constitution. Even I saw she knew that there are issues of how the legitimacy of what she's doing. She was trying to quote some provision in isolation of others within the Constitution and say, I have derived my power under this. That's not correct.
But you see, that's what I'm trying to find out. Is there a breach of protocol? Is there someone missing? Because as a father in a house, it's very strange for you to wake up one morning and find that the sitting room has been shifted from where it has been to the dining table without you having any idea of what is happening. So is there a breach of protocol? Is this just pretense? They know what they are doing, and what is going on?
You see, when you manage by scandal, that's what, of course, you take an example, UPDF. President Museveni created a militia under SFC and left the UPDF, I said from UPDF, and uses it the way he wants, not himself under any law. These are the issues which we have been asking in Parliament, that under which law is SFC created. There's no law. But now it is the new normal. You understand? So after creating a militia of the SFC within the UPDF, then now he has now created another, almost like a militia of Nakalema. And even, because now one asks, like I asked my sister here, so what is the relevance of IGG? What's the relevance of other?
And I think, of course, when Nakalema comes in under the guise of a presidential directive, and I think it isn't new that some time back the president actually hinted on it. Yes, obviously that undermines the office of the IG. But I think first what we need to, and the whole issue of legitimacy and the whole issue of the actions that the committee undertakes. Because much as we see quite a number of arrests happening, probably under Nakalema, under this whole Bank of Uganda saga, but we know that she doesn't prosecute. At the end of the day, she's going to get this one, she's going to hand them to the police. And then probably after the police has done these investigations and a police file is going to be produced, and then the DPP or the IG can take over. I mean, the issue is, and I think that has created a power shift. People tend to run to Nakalema because they think and they know she acts faster, and of course she has the backing of the president. But the one thing that we need to know is that the IG is a constitutionally mandated agency that was actually set up by the same government. So if the president comes up and says that the IG is not working, I think for me that is a vote of no confidence in his own government.
Sisi, but now, before you run away from that, you see our question, you saw the Kazinda matter. They know that, you know as I do, that under the law there are procedures of even doing these investigations, even of recovering exhibits. These guys bring in someone whom they know that these reports are not consumed by any organization. They mess up everything in terms of investigation. So at the end of the day, that procedure will be quashed. Because Kazinda was set free because they didn't follow the procedure of
the question here, I want to ask, sorry, is it a case of, is this politics at play where you have a certain ministry, a certain organization, but with another organization under it because you don't want to squash this one? You know, it's just like Bank of Uganda have had their mess, and it's been a mess that has been going on for quite some time. So if you know there is a mess there, why don't you come and clean it up? Why are you trying to create another organization here? And then this organization at the end of the day is also clashing with this one. Now we are asking ourselves who actually has the power to do what, who is in charge.
No, of course, we are dealing with quite a number of illegalities because legally the Nakalema unit does not have any legal mandate. Of course, we know it was established by the president through a directive. But remember, you have the 1995 constitution that legally establishes agencies that are supposed to handle corruption issues. Then I think it goes back to what Paul Miro has raised, isn't it? But because you see, we've had people who are actually saying that they're going to challenge the Nakalema unit. So what happens if at a particular point reports are produced and they're actually being challenged? So I think for me that is the bigger issue that we need to look at. The issue should be, if we're saying a particular government entity is not working, does the government actually, or the president, go in and dig deeper to understand why this unit or this agency is not working, and then beef it up? Because let us say Nakalema is actually working, then probably give her a desk in the IG's office, give her a desk in the Auditor General's office, not creating a separate, because by creating a separate unit, also you're going to start providing funds to that unit. And when you read a number of government reports, most agencies are actually struggling with resources. So I don't think the Nakalema unit is working without resources. So if the IG says, I'm constrained, I can't ably work, one of the things that is constraining me is resources, and then you create a parallel unit, are you actually resolving the problem that your same government entity that you've set up is facing?
I think what also shouldn't forget, you know, all over the world, mafias end up by fighting themselves. Do you understand? And I want to say that we are in the evenings of the mafiasm.
And the president has...
Yes, that's why you realize that today we have Bank of Uganda. The other day we had the Rubawa Hospital. They came to Parliament, they pushed through Parliament, they got the guarantee. To a few days, they have got 300 billion, they have now shared. Then Rocco runs to court to say, look, we are still, this is a 5 million course. We are on 1 million, you are chasing us away. So where we take solace is the fact that the mafiasm is in the evening of fighting, and all over the world they've been fighting themselves. But what is important, what she raises, there's what we call the accountability sector. We used to, you know, in other countries, because we belong to EAPAC, East African Public Accounts Committees, where we're in other countries that brought back together all organs of the state try to fight corruption. They have synchronized them, synergized, and you have one agenda. You understand objective. So it's up to you to pick out and say, look, in this package of fighting corruption, DPP, this is the role of DPP. This is the role of, because there's accountability around policy and power. You understand? But what we see now, they're running away from that now, running to creating like a militia whose reports are not consumed anywhere, who are not accountable to anybody apart from the press. Because if it is IGG, reports to Parliament. If Auditor General, produces reports to Parliament, consumes. If it is, you know, every sector of government. But you see, for me, my biggest worry, that this might be a scheme to come in, watch investigations, mess it up, so by the time you want to investigate, someone goes to court and say, look, how was this evidence recovered? Because they're just walking into somewhere without a search warrant, without anything. Because you see, even this question of Bank of Uganda, that time we saw when someone was coming in to pick documents, you understand? Meaning that what they only wanted was security. To condone off the place, decate a scene of crime, then they do the investigation.
But Honorable, as we talk about all the policies in place, we go back to the law. Now, if you take it back to March last year, when the IGG decided to raise matters when it came to BOU, the governor wrote a very heavy letter to her in which she mentioned the fact that under the Constitution, they have a mandate not to be questioned in any way. Yes? But here he is now going to Nakalema. I'll just quote a part where he said, by the Constitution, we cannot be by direct or control of any person or any authority. Reforms from the Kosase report at the end of February raised the fact that things like this, when the law gives an institution such power, things like this will continue to occur. How do we change the law? Because if we're in the evening of the mafia, can we perhaps say that the law will come in to change something?
No, I think he was also misinterpreting that autonomy. The autonomy extends to him performing his functions in accordance with the law. You understand? Once you go outside the law, then there is a problem. You see, I think the framers of the law as of then looked at the strategic importance of a Bank of Uganda. It's about the credibility of the currency. You understand? I think we didn't want a lot of intervention from the politician, all the time. But where are they driving us? We're going to amend the law. We want proper scrutiny. But what is going to happen? The problem is that once Bank of Uganda submits its policy statements to cabinet, then I mean the president will issue what we call the ceiling of the money and say your budget cannot exceed this amount of money. And then it's going to interfere into the operations of Bank of Uganda. Because why they are the leverage of raising money out of the bills they do and spending it as they want to continue to make the bank running. But what vindicates me, if this is not a mafiaism, we saw in Kenya. Because I was in Kenya, when people are complaining, people had the bags and bags of money. What did Kenya do? It issued a notice and said, whoever has money within 3 months, go and take it in the bank. Once the 3 months lapsed, they say now that card is not working. So we want to see Museveni take a bold move. Because after Chogam, even after a period of like 5 years, we kept on seeing Chogam notes. That meant, and even my colleagues saw some Chogam notes with the same serial number. Do you understand? That meant that for them they have been continue printing money as and when they want. So the only way the government, the own person can exonerate himself from this, that the damage control is doing through the media center, is by telling everybody who has money, at home, take it to the bank.
We're in a democracy, but maybe I think what I need actually to applaud Parliament is the over time Bank of Uganda was under that whole issue of immunity. You cannot actually come and look into our issues. And I think for the first time when Parliament came out and lifted the veil, I think we're able to see quite a lot of issues. And remember there was a showdown between the IG and the Governor of Bank of Uganda. The IG actually raised quite a number of issues, and again the Governor comes up and says actually we are immune. And one of the issues that I know that came out from the Kusasi report, which I think would be very important to implement other powers of the government, because the governor is the governor and he also sits on the board as the chairperson of the board. Then, because remember the board is supposed to offer oversight to the institution of the Bank of Uganda. So if the governor is seated on the same board that is actually supposed to offer him oversight, then obviously in a good governance that actually does not really work well. And maybe it should be one of, because the issue again that we need to ask ourselves is when the governor decides to call Nakalema, then who is in charge of the bank? Because we'd expect that probably the governor to be at the top of, I mean, he ought to know what exactly is happening. But then if he actually doesn't know, and again he decides to call another entity, and I think again it goes back to the fact that why did he have to call Nakalema and not the IG?
Even internally, we need to see the internal process. Because see, like when he used to appear in the consensus, whenever they would ask him, he would say answer. He would say so and so answer. Meaning that he was in charge, and they had officers under him. What should the initial steps he took to investigate this matter internally, which you informed this decision, even to go to Nakalema? How did he even dream of Nakalema? Not to the IGG, not to police, not to the general? Because you see,
now a Ugandan who probably paid his or her 200 shillings OTT for the past 2-3 days and has been seeing all this hullabaloo. Today is going to wake up in the morning and get his 2,000 Ghana shillings and buy a copy of the Daily Monitor and see this headline. The question is, I know you have applauded Parliament for lifting that veil.
Yeah.
Kusasi, they have done their work. They had a probe that was concluded. But you see, the question is, what is Parliament and all these Kusasi, and are they really doing their job? Can they do something, or is it another case of, well, on the government side we say, well, when this fails they create some other organization? So on Parliament side as well, is it just creating some Kusasi, let them also talk about it, let it look like we're doing something? Is there something that can be done?
I think we need to
and is Parliament doing it?
Actually, I think for me there are two issues. We need to go back to the Kusasi report. Well, Mr. Honorable Mirizan, the Kusasi report had a lot of parables in it. We wanted to see, because you know there was a lot of, I want to call it again, posturing. We saw what was happening in the media, and some of these things were broadcasted live and we were able to see what was happening. But the report, I think for me to some extent, fell short of actual recommendations. I think I saw one or two, but other recommendations I think for me were merely meandering around. Now, if a person is to get this report and then say they want to follow through, some of the recommendations a person has to imply them. I mean, they aren't actually as clear as they're supposed to be, and yet would have expected that. Going back to the issue that you asked, if some of the recommendations were so clear, then I think it would also become very easy for the agencies to follow up. Of course, Parliament will tell you that for them what they do is to come up with a report. Then other agencies like the police, IG, DPP are supposed to pick it up from.
But there's no foot down with all these concluded, investigations. There's never a foot down where you see that, Kosase, they had this investigation, they have, investigated all this, and in conclusion,
of course, he's got
they
to tell
have
you.
decided.
Obviously,
I am there. I can
he's
speak
going
for myself.
to tell you one of the things that happens is that they recommend and other agencies are supposed to take up. And I think, as an ordinary Ghana, I think, and like you're rightly saying, what we need to see is what happened after these reports have been done. Because and I'm going to go back to the whole issue that I said about people under Bank of Uganda that have been arrested. Like I said, they're going to go back to the police. And the moment, because I've been reading some of the issues that. Kanona Kalema says, which of course I agree, is that okay, the moment they arrest people, they have to go back into the system, and now you're taking them to the same police which people perceive to actually be corrupt. You're taking them back to the same police which also has its own financial hindrances. So what does that, even if these people have been arrested, the tail end actually shouldn't be arresting. The tail end should be let them be prosecuted and let them refund the money. Otherwise, we're going to have very many of these people that are actually arrested. But as Ugandans, what we want to see, if you're saying these people have actually done this, have you actually arrested them? Have they actually been taken to court? And there's a due process taken? Because remember, even when you take these people to court, what happens? Our courts have huge case backlog. So if I need this people to go to court now and you're bringing them before me as a judge, guess what? I already have my other ongoing cases. So this one has to probably come along the tail end. And again, we also know that some of these cases are charged. Some of them, with particular cases, will be handled depending on which political person has an angle and an axe to grind with a particular person.
Are you failing?
I think let me specifically respond to the issues as raised. The first question, what is our mandate? Parliamentary resolutions are not self-executing. They are not. You see, once Parliament passes resolutions, they are supposed to be executed by the executive, the Minister of Finance, through a Treasury memorandum. And it is the Treasury, after Treasury memorandum, the Auditor General is supposed to do an audit to see whether those audit recommendations have been complied with fully. That's when the audit cycle ends. But what has been the predicament of Parliament? We pass resolutions, many. Of course, the President, I talked about the mafia group. The President knows that if you take action against an accounting officer who is being investigated for unaccounted for money, the next time you ask for money for campaigns, they won't give you. That's why they even tell us, you do your report, there's nothing which will be done. So even this question of the Nakalema, my sister, you understand? The issue would be that if Nakalema was overseeing the implementation of resolutions of Parliament, so there is action, from me I would believe, maybe to a certain extent, the office is only in charge of following up so that every parliamentary resolution is executed. Maybe because there are very many recommendations of Parliament to the effect that accounts officers have failed to account for public money should refund the money. Or should be the action against them. But you see, once the government takes action against these accounting officers, because one of them told us that, you see, people, do you think I can take all that money? But it's you to account for that money, meaning that there are other invisible persons behind him over this money. So, as far as Parliament is concerned, you can only blame Parliament when we haven't produced a report. But respond specifically to what my sister was saying, I've ever been a co-chair of a committee. Producing a report first is very difficult. I'll give an example of OPM. We had evidence. We made observations. Now we are disagreeing on the recommendations. Actually, the actual rules that a report must be signed by a third. And those accountability committees, the majority are not opposition members. So you realize that even to get out a report, even to have a debate, you must compromise on some. That's how we allowed Honorable Sewungu to write a minority report on OPM. Because we realized the guys said, look, if you carry on these recommendations, we are not signing. And if they don't sign, the report will never see the light of day. So even to me, I would have a problem with the committee if we compromise the observation, because we all agree that these are the observations. But on the recommendation, I cannot fault a chair of a committee, because it will go through a lot into producing these recommendations. Because members may feel to cooperate and say, as long as you made this commission against Strand, so who is the own President Museveni, we are not signing.
This sounds a lot like one of those family gatherings where you all go home. And unfortunately, your father is reporting you to Ate, the grandmother, who clearly doesn't stay with you, so won't be able to do that much. It looks like Kosase and Parliament, this is a case of the grandmother being reported to what the child is doing at home. Grandmother only has a few hours with that child. He's going to say a thing or two, and then the child will be off with the father back home.
No. Actually, that's not true. Actually, if they were wise, they would be prosecuting themselves and cautioning them or giving themselves lighter sentences. You see, once Parliament passes a resolution and so on, and even the evidence is there, and don't take action, if there is if government changed, others might be interested in looking into those matters. Yet, if they prosecute themselves and give themselves lighter sentences, maybe we would say double jeopardy. You cannot punish someone twice for the same offense. But what they are doing, it is very dangerous for themselves.
Now let's take it to the people for a minute. You mentioned the fact that earlier someone printing their own currency, seeing a loophole, they're smart. But the Minister of Finance last week did mention one of the issues that as a country we're having when it comes to development is income inequality.
Yes.
If I see a position for me to get some money, I'm seeing all these people earning this money, and all I have to do is tell someone, just put for me this, an extra bit of this. Where do we leave the human being who is out there seeing everyone seem to get richer, get to enjoy? Well, for them, they don't seem to see anything come their way, and when it comes, it's an opportunity.
I think this takes me to the economy. There are some facts which we need to know, which the public must know. That when we talk about the Ugandan economy, the GDP, 85% is owned by 5% of the population. That's the starting fact. So the rest is what the other population actually holds. On that GDP of the 85%, which is held by 69% is held by foreigners of the GDP, meaning that there is even no economy to boast of in terms of what have been taking place. That's why when it comes even to the tax, 85% of the tax is from the central business area. That is Kampala, Wakiso, Mukono, and Impiji, maybe. So 15% comes from the rest of the population.
Yes.
And we're told this is ideological. They don't tax the population, so they don't ask for accountability. That's why even these things we're talking about, money, tax printing money, the wider population, which doesn't pay direct tax. Even the president acknowledged it. It's like a movie to them. You understand? That's why we think we need to get back to the drawing board. We do things the correct way and stop adopting the new normal. Because the new normal, where people are looking at corruption as no, because you see, I told you now, President Museveni manages by scandal.
Okay.
It used to be management by crisis, but now they manage by scandal.
It's by management by scandal.
Yes.
Okay. Sisi, as we wrap this up, let's not just sit here and mourn about what has happened and what is happening. How do we go forward?
I think how we go forward is very simple. One, and again, I'm going to urge Parliament, because there are quite a number of very interesting recommendations, or quite a lot that Parliament can do. And I had Honorable Murray talking about the whole issue of recommendations and how at times those dynamics that are involved at committee level. But you see, as Parliament, if you come up with recommendations and the recommendations are not clear because a number of players are coming up, it doesn't actually. But if the recommendations are very clear and then action is taken, because if the recommendations are not clear, then who is actually going to implement them? So I think we're going to need a new breed of probably members of Parliament who can actually stick out their neck and say, guys, this has to move on. Because like, I'm just looking at the Kosase thing that they actually undertook when it comes to Bank of Uganda. There's a lot that was happening. It only fell short of clear recommendations. Probably had those recommendations been very clear, not taken up by legalese and technicalities that are supposed to come up at a committee level, maybe some of the things that we're saying would probably be sorted out. And secondly, I think what I would want to see is Let us go back to strengthening institutions. Let institutions work. Because trust me, this whole issue that we are seeing of Bank of Uganda, I highly doubt whether we're going to see the end of it all. What we're going to see is a few arrests and then posturing, and I think for me that is the end of it all. Let us ensure that institutions are working. Let the institutions be actually strengthened. Let them be given the adequate resources. And let us follow the already established laws and policy. Because we really have a lot of laws, but what you need is actually the political will. Without political will, it's just all about posturing.
Moving forward.
For me, the way forward is simple. If President Museveni is not part of this scheme, let us just recall all the currency. Simple. You understand? We give a notice that everybody must post money in the bank and get new notes.
Yeah.
What has been done in Kenya and Tanzania. Once we do that, then it will be exonerated. But if it does not do this, then the presumption is that it was a question of who took which pallet. Someone may have carried a bigger pallet which had more money than what was not his or her. Wow. Because it is a deal gone bad. They knew yours was a small pallet.
Yes.
When it came to picking the cargo, then you pick the big pallet. The only way you can do that is a call of currency. You just tell everybody 3 months, you put the money in the bank. We have the financial intelligence unit. They will see who will be banking more money than what he or she earns.
Okay.
That money can be freezed. And we run out of this question. How can we have for over 7 years the dollar being between 3,500 and 3,700? It is maintained by people who have cash money. When the dollar is stabilized, they come and buy the dollar off the market, and you keep on destabilizing the foreign exchange.
Okay. Thank you very much. Joining us this morning, Honorable Paul Mweru, member of Kosase and MP Ginger East constituency, together with Sisi Kagaba, who is the ED Anti-Corruption Coalition Uganda. And of course, we have been discussing the Bank of Uganda currency printing scandal. And wow, interesting. This doesn't sound like it's about to end. We'll definitely talk more about it. That's a conversation. Thank you for being part of it. If you want to share any of your thoughts, you can do that. The hashtag is morning at NTV across all social media platforms. We'll be back in a few to get onto our Take Note conversation.
Sukuma Cash ni Airtel Money okwate ku bulamu bwabo bonna bw'oyagala.
Amanya ganze kalungi Ivan mbeera Kanyanda mbadde nga nkozesa Airtel Money okusasula amasannyalaze kusasula